Dr. Hagelin is a world-renowned quantum physicist, educator, author, and president of the Global Union of Scientists for Peace. Dr. Hagelin has published over 100 scientific books and articles on fundamental particle physics, electroweak unification, grand unification, supersymmetry, and cosmology. He is responsible for the development of a highly successful grand unified field theory based on the superstring, a theory that was featured in a cover story of Discover magazine. Dr. Hagelin is also one of the world's preeminent researchers on the effects of yoga and yogic meditation, including transcendental meditation, on brain development and higher states of consciousness, samadhi and enlightenment, and the use of Vedic technologies of yoga and yajna to diffuse societal stress, prevent crime and social violence, and to promote economic prosperity and societal peace. Dr. Hagelin received his A.B. summa cum laude from Dartmouth College in 1975, and his PhD is from Harvard University in 1981. He is currently director of the Institute of Science, Technology, and Public Policy and professor of physics at Maharishi University of Management. It's a very great honor to welcome Dr. John Hagelin.
Good afternoon, Shankaracharya Maharaj, Rajaramji, great sadhus and scholars and scientists and political leaders and entrepreneurs. It's really an honor to be participating in this great new awakening of the profound and powerful Vedic wisdom in this auspicious conference. My focus and the focus of this conference primarily is the Vedic science and its practical technologies in our modern world today. Most people throughout the world, many even in India, certainly many young people in India, don't truly know what Veda is. The focus of my talk today will be that Vedic science, the Vedic wisdom, is truly scientific. It is immensely practical and proven, and it is increasingly indispensable in this modern age. I will show that the Vedic tradition, as I think you all realize, is founded upon the complete knowledge and practical utilization of the ultimate reality, which in the modern scientific language we call the unified field. So since we're talking about Vedic science and technology, let me phrase the question and answer it from the standpoint of a physicist. What is Veda? Well, in essence, as the chart shows, Veda is the foundational level of natural law, the deepest laws of nature governing the universe, the laws that govern the emergence of the universe, the evolution of the universe, the deepest laws of nature. Now, from modern science, looking back over the history of the last 50 years, has been an exploration of deeper levels of reality, deeper and deeper levels of reality, beginning with Newtonian physics or classical physics of the macroscopic, observable world, our environment, but then in the last century delving into the world of the atom, which is governed by quantum mechanics, and then delving into the realm of the nucleus, which is governed by quantum field theory. And now the main thrust of physics today is delving into the unified field. As this chart shows, or superstring field in the language of physics, the most fundamental laws of nature that give rise to all the particles and forces that govern the universe all of the atoms and molecules and macromolecules and physiologies and planets and galaxies. The whole universe, as you can see, emerges stage by stage in a very precisely understood mechanics from universal, pure intelligence, the unified field giving rise to the world of matter. And the whole understanding by science of the dynamics of that unity, the mechanics of creation, the mechanics of the emergence of this ever-changing relative universe from the never-changing absolute, the emergence of the mortality from the field of immortality. That is the focus of physics today, and that is, as this chart shows, the eternal focus, the eternal wisdom of the Vedas. In fact, I will claim and then show that the Vedic knowledge, the Veda itself, is that fundamental dynamics of unity at the basis of the emerging diversity of the universe. That, in the modern scientific language, Veda is the unified field. In showing that, this audience today may not require much convincing. But honestly, in giving this talk to most scientific audiences in the West, they say, well, wait a minute. Are you saying that the ancient rishis and forest dwellers thousands of years ago actually conceived of the fundamental unity of life? They understood, even experienced the unified field at the basis of creation. And I will typically say, I hate to disappoint you, but actually the Vedic science is, in most important respects, more advanced and far more practical in its application than modern science. I'm going to show that. This is what I call my 6-minute detour. I'm going to show, because there are scientists in the audience, that the unified field is the Veda, and the Veda is the unified field. Well, how do you show that? Well, one way is to look at the universe that comes out of the Veda, and look at the universe that comes out of the unified field, and I will show that they are identical. If somebody gives you 2 seeds, and they say these are very precious orange seeds, and they will yield a very precious orange tree, you might just believe them, or if you're skeptical, you may want to prove that these 2 seeds, these 2 unified fields, the unified field and the Veda, are really the same. Well, one thing you can always do is you can plant the seed in the ground and watch what comes out, and you can determine whether you do get an orange tree, or maybe one of them gives a lemon tree. So if we look what comes out of the fundamental unified field, what comes out of the Veda, if they're different, then the unified field is not the Veda. But if they are the same, then the unified field and the Veda are the same seed. Different languages, different approaches. One experiential, the other mathematical, intellectual. But we can see whether they are the same. So let's take a look. What comes out of the unified field? The universe comes out of the unified field. And this shows a little bit what the unified field is. Unified field is an ocean of pure existence, an ocean of infinite silence, an unbounded sea of intelligence and pure creativity. But on the surface of the ocean is the ever-changing world of change and of dynamism. So silence at its core, dynamic on the surface of the ocean of pure being. That is the structure of the unified field. If you wish, in the Vedic language, this infinite silence, absolute, unchanging, beyond space and beyond time, may be Shiva, Purusha. The ever-changing relative on the surface of life is the Shakti of Shiva, the dynamism that brings forth the universe, or Prakriti. Now, in physics, these bubbling emergence from the unified field, the universe that emerges, has a particular geometric shape. These bubbles look like ginger ale, continuously bubbles of ginger. They're not ginger ale, actually. These are called superstrings, and they are actually infinitesimal elastic loops. That's just what the mathematics tells us. By the way, we have a word in the Vedic literature talking about this emerging Prakriti. Sutratma, or string self, is a name that is used for this aspect of Prakriti. But we have these fundamental strings, and these strings vibrate. Rubber bands vibrate. And they vibrate in certain ways, with certain frequencies. And the mathematicians can calculate all the different vibrational frequencies, the tones of a rubber band. It's relatively simple, except these rubber bands live in 10 dimensions, so there's a lot of elbow room, a lot of wiggle room, and it gets a little more complicated. But the miracle of unified field theory, the magic of string theory, is this. When you calculate the different frequencies of the unified field, calculate the different frequencies, which means the different energies of vibration. And according to Einstein, that means different masses of the superstrings. The higher vibrations have more mass. The lazy vibrations are nearly massless. When you do the calculation, amazingly, what you find is the universe we know. And the universe we know is made of 5 fundamentals. These are called the 5 spin types. Spin 2, graviton. Spin 3 halves, gravitino. Spin 1, forces like electromagnetism. Spin 1/2, particles like electrons and the Higgs boson. And these 5 fundamental ingredients of the physical universe that come out of the unified field actually have a more holistic description in terms of what are called 3 superfields. The unification of graviton and gravitino give you gravity superfield, and so forth, in just this way. But isn't that exactly the nature of the universe that arises from the Veda? In the Vedic literature, we have the emergence, and this is described in Charak Samhita and in Ayurveda. You have the emergence of the physical body in terms of these 3 very subtle qualities called prakritis, doshas. And these doshas are 3, vata, pitta, kapha. And vata, pitta, kapha are the combination of akash and vayu. These are the pancha mahabhutas. Tejas and apas, or fire and water, and apas and prithvi, or water and earth. These unifications bring 3 from 5, or 5 from 3. That is exactly the structure we find in physics. And it's not only that we have this mathematical correspondence in the language of physics and the language of consciousness, the language of the Veda. Not only do we have this mathematical correspondence and precise groupings, but it's also what they are. I mean, what is Akasha? Akasha is space. Space is subtle substance. As Einstein would say, space as relativistic fluid. Einstein said that gravity is just the curvature of space which flows like a fluid. This is the ether. This is Akasha. So this correspondence of what comes out of the Veda and what comes out of the unified field of physics is exactly the same. So comparing the lemon tree with the orange tree and finding that they are the same tree means they come from the same seed, and that Veda and unified field are one. Now, there's one more step in this There are actually 5 main avenues of scientific proof that are popular among physicists about the identity of Atma and Veda with the unified field. I'm showing you one. That's the quantitative correspondence, the structural correspondence between Veda and unified field. I'm going to spend a few more minutes on that and go deeper into it. Let us not just look at the tree of life that emerges from the Veda and that emerges from the unified field. Let's look inside the unified field itself. That means beyond space and time, because this area of physics is beyond the Planck scale, beyond space, beyond time. It's primary to space and time. And if you see here, you can see some numbers, 8, 24, 64, 128, 192. These numbers describe the structure of the unified field, internal structure and vibrations. The unified field is humming within itself. It's reverberating within itself. What we're going to look at is the frequencies of vibration of really the Atma, the Veda, the unified field, and show that they're the same. So I'll do it very, very, very quickly. In the physics, the unified field has a mathematical parallel to a string, and that's why it's called string theory. Now, if you look at a string, a guitar string has 2 completely independent ways of vibrating. A string in space can vibrate up and down, as this diagram shows, or it can vibrate back and forth, to the left and to the right, as this diagram shows. So one string admits 2 different independent vibrational frequencies. Now, because a guitar string lives in 3 dimensions and time, so you have 1 dimension of the string itself and 2 dimensions perpendicular to the string. Superstring theory lives in 9 space dimensions, or 10 space-time dimensions. So you have many more perpendicular directions, 8 in fact, in which the string can vibrate. So the unified field in physics really resembles an instrument like this. It really only has 1 string, but because of the number of dimensions, the string has 8 independent frequencies, 8 independent tones, 8 resonant frequencies. So when the unified field is described as the superstring, it actually, when this superstring is far removed from life, it's far removed from Chandichok, it's far removed from our changing world. It exists at a very transcendental level. But in the process of creating creation, the string theory undergoes a metamorphosis, several of them, an internal transformation. What happens in physics is this superstring that lives in 10 dimensions transforms into what's called the bosonic string, named after the great Indian physicist Bose, that lives in 26 dimensions. And because it lives in 26 dimensions, the bosonic string actually has 24 independent vibrational states, independent sounds, independent frequencies. And that's not the end. That bosonic string transforms itself again into something called the free fermionic string that has 64 vibrational degrees of freedom. And finally, through a somewhat more complicated mechanism, the last stage of transformation is the fermionic string gives rise to, through a process called space-time supercompactification, which I show here. You can do this on your own at home. And if you do the math properly, you will discover that the final stage of transformation of the string in preparation to create the universe has a 192-fold vibrational structure, 192 tones or sounds is the unified field reverberating within itself. Why do I go through this? I go through this because if you compare that structure to the Veda, the Rig Veda, which was described today as the blueprint of the universe by Dr. Nader, the template on which the universe is structured, you see a very similar structure. You see that the Rig Veda, which Maharshi said earlier today, is captured in one sound ah, representing the totality, the wholeness. But it's a very abstract wholeness. Veda flows to elaborate on itself as Agni Mile Purohitam. That's the first pada of the Rig Veda, first 8 syllables of the Rig Veda, which then further elaborates itself as Yajnasya Devam Ritvijam Hotaram Ratnadhatamam. That's the first richa of the Rig Veda, and then continues to flow to the 64 and 192 syllables of the entire first sukta. It is a sequential unfoldment of unity represented by A, which stands for the Atma, to diversity through a precise sequence. And that was incredibly beautifully developed by Maharshi Mahesh Yogi in what he calls the Apaurushaya Bhashya of the Veda, meaning uncreated commentary by human mind, because the Veda comments on itself. And the universe itself is a commentary on the Veda, emerging from the Veda and commenting on the Veda. So what we find here is, as we just said, the Veda unfolds from 8 to 24 to 64 to 192. These are different packages of wholeness, each representing the totality of knowledge. And just from that, you can see that the structure of the superstring and its sequential unfoldment to give rise to the diversified universe is the same as the sequential unfoldment of the Rig Veda from A to the entire 192 syllables of the first sukta, from within which the gaps between those syllables give rise to the 192 suktas of the Rig Veda, and so forth. So, of the first mandala of the Rig Veda. So, it's the same structure. And on that basis, we can conclude, and this is an argument that physical scientists will accept, that the Veda is the ultimate reality. That Veda is the ultimate level of natural law that is immortal, giving rise to the whole field of mortality. The absolute, giving rise to the ever-changing relative. So this is perhaps interesting to some, not to everybody, I'm sure, but interesting to people who want to understand what Veda is in a scientific context. The rest of my comments will be on, okay, what good is it? What I'd like to point out is that the Vedic technologies of yoga and yajna and Ayurveda and Sthapatya Veda, architecture, and so forth, these Vedic technologies based on the Veda are really unified field-based technologies. Technologies based on the practical application of the unified field. Let's take a quick look at one. Let's look at yoga, and if you wish, the physics of yoga. Yoga is 8 limbs of yoga, Ashtanga yoga, and I'll be focusing my few comments on what's called dharana, dhyana, samadhi, the meditative science of yoga. Now, from a standpoint of physics, what is consciousness and what is yoga? Well, as we've already seen, the universe is structured in layers of creation, from superficial to profound, from diversified to unified. From this perspective, you might be surprised to learn that human consciousness, that the mind has a parallel structure, an exactly parallel structure. So in the Vedic literature, of yoga, mind can be divided into superficial to profound. At the surface level of mind, we have vaikari, which is concrete thought, articulated thought. Subtler than that is madhyama, abstract conceptual thought. This is the world of the mathematician, maybe the world of the physicist. Deeper than madhyama is pashanti, which is the finest feeling level of the mind. And beyond that is the atma, para, transcendental, beyond concept, beyond the mind, beyond the thinking mind. Now, amazingly, mathematicians have been busy. And mathematicians have been corroborating, have been verifying this exact same structure. In fact, the mathematicians have divided it up a little bit in greater detail. So the mathematicians have identified different levels of mind, from the very narrow concrete to the most expansive, most holistic, most powerful, most comprehensive level of mind. So if we start with the crude, we have the counting numbers 1, 2, 3. You master those numbers, you're perfectly prepared to go shopping. This is what, you go to the store, you get 3 apples. Subtler than that is the whole numbers, almost the same, but a little more abstract. It includes 0. Then we have the integers, negative numbers, which are a little more abstract, perhaps, but more powerful. Every level is becoming much more powerful. And then you have fractions, which most of us are familiar with, and that is the end of articulated mathematics. Then comes these levels called real numbers, complex numbers, and function spaces. You can't even write these numbers down. These are called transcendental numbers. They cannot be written down, they can't be spoken, but conceptually they exist. This is the level of madhyama, abstract conceptual thinking. Deeper than that, we have the level of the most expansive concepts, slipping beyond human comprehension. Those are limits of function spaces and products of function spaces. And then finally, what the mathematicians call the universe of sets. This is infinity beyond comprehension. This is consciousness beyond comprehension. This is transcendental consciousness. And these levels of mind actually correspond to the physical world. You need these different levels of mathematical sophistication, mathematical expansion, mathematical power, mathematical abstraction to handle, to comprehend physics at the quantum mechanical level, at the quantum field theoretic level, and at the unified level, truly to comprehend the unified field, the Atma, that's beyond conceptual grasp. That is direct experience in samadhi. So now what is yoga? Getting to the point. So the mind exists on different levels. Yoga and yogic meditation specifically, transcendental meditation, for example, is a powerful set of techniques to take our outwardly directed attention powerfully within, to explore deeper and deeper and deeper levels of mind. Then slipping beyond mind, we have the experience of the transcendent reality, the Atma. This is the state of what is called samadhi, transcending thought, the direct experience of the universal self. Now, this Vedic understanding is now a modern scientific understanding as well. The meditative state, samadhi, is now established as a fourth major state of consciousness. It's not waking, not dreaming, not sleeping, it's samadhi. It has its own neurophysiology, profound orderliness of brain functioning, global extension of coherent functioning of the brain, and its own state of body. It brings a level of rest much deeper than sleep. Deep rest, for example, has powerful effects at dissolving stress and preventing stress-related illness. For example, studies, and we'll talk about the practicality of Vedic medicine later in the conference, but every major category of disease markedly reduced simply by the regular experience of the transcendent. Heart disease, radical reduction in heart disease, heart attack, stroke, and death through transcending. And the US government and the American Heart Association recently recognized in a formal national policy recommending doctors prescribe transcendental meditation. Because among all the different mental exercises and relaxation techniques that exist, they found, in the biggest study ever done of its kind, that it's really only transcending. And transcendental meditation is a very easy, effortless way of transcending that actually lowers blood pressure, actually prevents heart disease, prevents stroke, prevents death. So this is real. Healthcare costs in major studies go way down, even among senior citizens whose health expenses tend to be very high when they learn to transcend. So in this context, let me mention that Vedic medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, is really Atma-based, unified field-based medicine. This is quite remarkable. Modern medicine is essentially chemical medicine, pharmacological medicine. Modern medicine, of course, has its procedures to deal with the gross physiology, like orthopedics and surgery, but really the thrust of modern medicine today is at the chemical level of the human body, the level of pharmacology. There's a hint of the nuclear level today in what's called nuclear medicine, but it's very, very slight. In contrast, Vedic medicine is a far deeper, far more fundamental approach to health, a far more fundamental understanding of the body. Yes, Ayurvedic medicine has its gross physiological treatments and purification, and its herbal medicine, which is the most developed in the world. But really the focus of Ayurveda is down here at the level of the unified field. Remember, Ayurveda is about balancing the doshas, balancing the physiology at the deepest level, the level that a physicist would say the level of the three superfields, the level of the three doshas. And part of Ayurveda really is yoga, transcending, dealing with the mind and body from its unified source in the unified field. So it's pretty clear that Ayurvedic medicine, in principle, is millions of times more powerful than allopathic medicine, because these nuclear and subnuclear levels are millions of times more powerful than chemical medicine. And fortunately, not just more powerful, because that could be dangerous, naturally free of side effects, because we're dealing with the body at a holistic level, the level of unity, and the level of the emergence of three fundamental from the field of unity, the three doshas. Very hard to go wrong at that deep and holistic level of the body. So literally, Vedic medicine is Atma-based medicine, unified field-based medicine. And later in the conference, other speakers will talk about Vedic education as Atma-based education, unified field-based education. Yes, Vedic education should preserve our Vedic culture and our Vedic masterpieces like the Ramayana and the Bhagavad Gita, all of that deep, precious heritage. But more fundamentally, Vedic education is based upon the Atma, developing the self, development of consciousness, development of the mind, development of the brain, development of intelligence, development of creativity, development of learning ability. All of that results from the experience of the Atma. We'll talk more about that later. Vedic defense, very important in this age. India is not free. The US is certainly not free of enemies. How do you defend ourselves against enemies in an age where enemies are very difficult to even define or spot or locate? Vedic defense is unified field based defense and really deals with that directly and powerfully in a proven way. So this will be discussed at the conference as well. And I would say Vedic civilization is really Atma-based civilization, unified field-based civilization. The Vedic tradition, as I said before, is truly founded upon the complete knowledge and the practical application of the ultimate reality, the reality of the Veda, the reality of Atma, the reality of the unified field. And the potential of that knowledge and those techniques, those technologies for life are limitless. Ram Raj, life in perfection, life without suffering, was entirely based upon the application of the Vedic principles and the Vedic programs and the Vedic technologies. This can be achieved as easily today, yes, in Kali Yuga, as it can be achieved at any time. And this conference for me is a great light of hope, because there's such intelligent people here and such great leaders of our country, of this country especially, are here to understand and to support and to implement these very powerful, timeless Vedic technologies. Thank you.